staying in India, and the country is considering steps that could see it renamed Bharat. Unconfirmed reports suggest President Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist government is looking to change the country's name through a special session. I asked Prerna Singh, Professor of Political Science at Brown University, what's behind the move.
These names for India and Bharat, neither of these names are new. They have been used really for millennia. They have been used interchangeably and synonymously. And so in some senses, it's also important to understand the way in which this attempt to change its name sits a little uneasily, in addition to, of course, the unexpectedness of it. It's also important to note that neither of the names are new and neither has been uniquely associated with any particular ideology. And so the words India and Bharat, the names were used by India's first Prime Minister, Nehru, in his speeches and his writings. They were used also in the 1980s and 1990s when I was growing up in India. One of the most popular campaigns was called Mera Bharat Mahan, which means My India is Great. And this was a very patriotic campaign. And the present regime has not been shy about using the term India. And so one of the big platforms for the Prime Minister when he got elected to power was India Shining. And so it's interesting that neither name is new, neither name has an association with any particular ideology, secular or Hindutva. And even though the context in which this has happened is obviously the G20 summit in India, I think the way to best understand this move is to look domestically and to think about the audience that is being catered to domestically rather than on the international stage.
And let's talk about what the name change to Bharat would signal within the country, because it does have a political dimension to it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Almost a dozen countries have changed their names since the Second World War. And the ostensible reason why the BJP has said that it is changing the name is because it is a colonial construct. And so I think in some ways it's important, again, to keep in mind that this wasn't a colonial name. It was used by the British, by the East India Company, no doubt. But the name India actually is associated with the Indus River and goes back to the Greek historian Herodotus, has been used by travelers since. And so even though the reason that is given is that it is a colonial construct, and in some ways that would align a potential name change with name changes such as the change to Sri Lanka from Ceylon in the 1970s, the change from Burma to Myanmar, which actually the United States does not still recognize, Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. And so I think there is a certain narrative that is being constructed by which a potential name change would align with these kinds of decolonizing moves. But I think it is really the elections around the corner, the fact that more than 1 billion Indians or a large proportion of those billion Indians will take to the polls in just a few months, and the fact that the opposition has come together in an alliance that is using the acronym India, the India Nationalist Development Inclusive Alliance. I think that is the context in which this embracing of the term Bharat is best understood.